So welcome everyone to our latest installment of the virtual roundtables. My name is Jahn Karsybaev, and I'm the CTO at ProSource IT and also host on the Ivy podcast. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Friday afternoon during your lunch hour for most of you guys. Today we have we have a very exciting panel for you guys with executives from two great companies. Please welcome Chris Harrison from Anthology. He is in your top left corner. And Raj Sethuraman from Wolters Kluwer. The theme of today's webinar, which between three of us we've discussed a couple of times, is essentially crossroads between the IT and the business, because it's the unique topic and a personal interest of mine, as there's a lot of executives who make successful transitions between the CIO, CTO type of roles to CEO and COO. And that, essentially there's a lot of opportunity there. So we wanted to bring these two great executives to you guys today and share a lot of practical knowledge, case studies, and we also wanted to touch upon some of the questions you guys had submitted to us. So really appreciate that. Further ado, Chris, actually, I'm going to start with you, Chris. Can you tell us a little bit more about, you guys had recently merged and three companies came together. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about that.
Absolutely, John, thank you. And it's great to meet everyone. And I'm really excited to be here and get to know everyone virtually. My name is Chris Harrison, and I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Operations for LATAM, UK, and Western Europe for Anthology. That includes my responsibility of P&L and responsibilities for sales in about 40 countries. I've been with Anthology for about a year, formerly Campus Management Corporation. And as of last week, on July 7 of this year, we actually merged together three different companies. Formerly our Campus Management Corporation out of Boca, Campus Labs, and iModules. And today, all together are forming the third largest EdTech company in the US, serving together over 2,100 colleges and universities across the globe, and in 30 countries serving over 13 million students. We've got physical operations in multiple cities across the United States. For our Latin division, we've got physical presence in Brazil. For EMEA, we have presence in the UK and India, supporting the APAC, Africa, our Middle East, and the remaining of the continents. In terms of the products and services that we offer, and our value proposition, those are solely focused on the educational sector, where we have over 32 years of experience in the market, providing solutions ranging from ERP, CRM solution, student information system, alumni, donor, analytics, retention, and many other solutions that are aimed to fulfill the entire student's life cycle within their higher ed ecosystem, from really recruitment to alumni. I've been blessed to be spending the last 30 years in the tech world, working for Fortune 500 companies and traveling the globe, doing major initiatives in various sectors, including banking, insurance, hospitality, supply chain, and most recently I've been focusing on higher ed for the last 15 years. As you may notice a little bit of my accent, I was born in New York City, and at an early stage I moved to Chile and grew up there for about 15 years. Then I came back to the States, attended college in there at Barry University right here in South Florida for my undergraduate, and then I pursued my MBA at Nova Southeast University in Fort Lauderdale. And Miami, South Florida has really been my home for the last 30 years. Prior to my role at Anthology, I was the Chief Technology Officer for Nova Southeast University. They're the largest private nonprofit institution in the state of Florida, where I was there for about 5 years, driving all the major digital transformation efforts. And then prior to that, I was able to run my own digital marketing company, including a tech incubator. And then if we go back in time, I run all the development and support activities as a vice president for Kaplan, which today, that is Purdue Global. I'm a father of two, so I'm also a parent here. 2 kids are in college. I am fluent in Spanish, something you might not know about myself. And I also, in my spare time when I have, when we're allowed to, I love flying aircraft, specifically light sport aircraft.
Wow, that's exciting. Thank you, Chris, for sharing that background with us and a little bit more personal on about yourself. For our listeners and participants, Chris and I are neighbors. You know, we're both in South Florida, and actually, Nova Southeastern is one of my alma maters as well. So that's exciting. Thank you for that. Raj, if you don't mind, please share with us your background, a little more about Wolters Kluwer, and something about yourself.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me in here. It's my deep pleasure to be with Chris and John here today. And we are dealing with a health crisis, and I hope that every one of you is doing well and your loved ones. As far as Walter's Kluwer goes, so I'll provide a background of the company and the business I am in so that you can connect the dots. Wolters Kluwer is a global provider of software solutions, products, and information to multiple sectors. And we are headquartered out of Alphen, Netherlands. Our company is a 183-year-old company. So as you can imagine, we have a strong heritage, and also the company has witnessed several transformations in its journey. It started like a publishing company, then we moved to web, and from there, digital transformation and also expert solutions. We primarily have four business units: healthcare, tax and accounting, legal and regulatory, and the last one is governance, risk, and compliance. And each business division has a portfolio of innovative offerings that help our customers to manage their day-to-day lives, workflows, and achieve efficiency and productivity. So that's the way how we set ourselves apart in the marketplace. So we continuously innovate and try to push harder to achieve customer delight. Now, I work for Wolters Kluwer ELM Solutions, Enterprise Legal Management Solutions. It's part of GRC, Governance, Risk, and Compliance Business Division. So who are we? ELM Solutions is a market leader in enterprise legal management software. We actually serve all Fortune 500's corporate legal departments and insurance claim departments. We have a portfolio of products that help them to manage their day-to-day tasks, workflows, and also their engagement with external law firms. And we are headquartered out of Houston and operations in uh, several places across the world. So we have offices in Hartford, London, and Chennai. So that's about our company. Now, in terms of my role as a chief technology officer, I am responsible for establishing and executing technology vision that help us drive business growth, delight our customers, and also drive market disruption. Now I'll go back to my background. So I started off my career as a software engineer way back in the early 90s and started learning technologies to solve complex business problems. That was my passion at that time. And I moved to United States in 2000 and started managing global teams to deliver highly scalable software platforms. And that's when I transitioned from an individual contributor to a leader, and it was not by design, it was by choice. Now, I joined Intuit in 2006 and led the company's transformation from product to a platform company. It was a huge transformation effort with iPhone, Facebook, and other social media kicked in during that time. And I spent 7 years there. Then I joined a market leader in entertainment and media payroll, company named Entertainment Partners. And I drove the innovation of consolidating the financial solutions for entertainment space by creating an ecosystem, another transformation journey. And I joined Wolters Kluwer's ELM Solutions back in 2017 May. So that's my background. I also earned my master's in business administration and also my advanced AMP program through my career journey. So I earned my MBA program from USC, Marshall School of Business, and AMP from Harvard Business School in 2015. Now, I have three children. and we live in Houston. My passion is just playing tennis with my sons, nothing beyond that, because I'm not a tennis pro, to be honest, but that helps me to keep going. And what's personal to me is the continuous learning. I always try to see how I can learn from others. And today we are all here. So I'm not here to tell my experience, but also through your questions, learn great things. So that's the background and my experience in a nutshell.
That's great. Thank you so much, Raj. Much appreciated. Chris, you've held various executive roles in IT, and most recently, you've transitioned, so to say, into the business side role as a vice president of strategy and operations. Can you share with us the lessons learned through this transition, and what are your recommendations for other executives looking to make that transition from IT to the operations or the business side of the organization?
Absolutely, John. First, I think there's no magic or silver bullet for this. Every situation really is different. Depends on the market, the segment, where you are in your career, how open the company it is for you to actually make an adjustment and move over. But let me just throw in, out of the top of my head, a couple of things that have worked for me in the past. One is you need to understand your business. So you got to take yourself out of that traditional technology role and try to understand better about the business, speak the language that they can understand. Try to get yourself out of that role in place and there. Be sensitive to the needs in the business, whether it's growth, whether it's revenue, whether it's attrition, whether it's market share, whatever it is in place, but try to become sensitive to that, try to understand and make sure that the people that are around you understand that you are also representing the business side, not just the technology side. Second, I would say, try to become familiar with financials of the company, understanding numbers in the financials, P&L, budget, balance sheets, statements, all those financial artifacts are very, very important for you to be able to move into the business role. When you're able to have the same conversation or understand or have the same language, common language with the CFO, other people, I think that's going to resonate as being someone who is not only a technology at heart, but understands, has got a strong understanding of the business. Third, I would say try to participate in activities or projects with the business that are going to allow you to demonstrate your business acumen. Business acumen, I think it's one of the most important things that you can bring across. So where you're having a conversation around the table, participating in a project or a meeting, discussion, board, try to make sure you understand the background of the company. What are the challenges in place? Why you try to head into it? What is the structure of the organization in place? What are the competitors in place? How can you use technology to be leveraged as a catalyst for that organization or that company? What do you need to do to provide some competitive advantages? So these are some of the thoughts that I have that have worked for me in the past. You also got to be willing to put yourself out of your comfort zone, right? Because now all of a sudden you're going to be moving away from your traditional managing your contracts, your technology, your labor, your workforce, and being seen as a technology guy. You've got to be able to gradually make the shift outside that comfort zone. And that takes time. That takes preparation. In my case, it took probably years. Part of it helped me because I run my own business as well. So I was on the side of the business focused specifically in higher ed. So that also allowed me to have a better understanding how to run your own business, run your P&L, be sort of the general manager for your business itself, and be on the customer side. And then technology just became a foundation or an enabling rather than just be your primary function in place. Now, you also want to go out and look for the role. Those opportunities usually don't come to you. Nobody's going to come at your knock on your door and say, John or Raj, hey, we think you would be great running a sector of the business in here. You've got to be able to go out there. You've got to be able to seek that opportunity. You've got to be able to figure out where you want to be, what type of business or sector or company you want to be. You've got to focus, target it, figure out a way to target that organization in place. And then lastly, you've got to be able to sometimes take a step back because now you're going into a whole different role that you're competing with people that are very seasoned in that space in there, people that have run already their P&Ls, that have run their businesses. So sometimes you have to take professionally a step back to be able to gradually grow into that role, prove yourself for about a year, a couple of years until that ultimate role that you're trying to achieve is going to be there for you. But you've got to be able to, go out there, look for it, profile the company that you want to do it, or if it's internally, start work through your angles, build a relationship among your peers on the business side, and start showing that you really want to move into that. Because opportunities like that are not going to come knocking on your door. You've got to go out there and search for those.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those examples. You know, diversification of the skill set, and you know, at the end of the day, relationships matter as well. So I'm glad to hear some of those examples to be able to leverage that and start building that early on with, you know, the vision that you're looking to make that transition down the road. So thank you for that. Raj, to shift the topic a little bit, Wolters Kluwer is a global organization. As you mentioned, you guys have offices throughout the states, internationally. I'm curious, how has COVID impacted the operations within your organization, and how have you guys adapted? If you can share any practical recommendations or any case studies from that period, that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. COVID, right? It's unprecedented, as all of us are aware of. Now, as terrifying as this crisis has been, it's amazing to watch our human capacity to adapt to it. Like many other companies, moved from their in-person to remote posture, and we moved to complete remote posture in the last few months, ever since it started. Now, when it comes to operations, there are few areas that we are pushing hard, and we turn on a dime on all such areas in order for us to continuously deliver to our customers and also keep the employees engaged. So I'll break that into certain areas. So let's start with employees. Now, it's important when your employees are working remote to ensure that they have the right level of technologies, security, and making sure that they are in a remote environment, the way how you engage with them, right? So the aspects of our operations we tweaked. The second one is our operating mechanisms. Now, we used to have the monthly business review meetings, quarterly business reviews, so all days meeting, right? So we had some operating cadence. Now we switched that. So what we are doing, instead of an all day meeting, now we are going to hold two halves, 3 hours today, 3 hours tomorrow, something like that. So we shifted the way how we manage our business in terms of engaging with the critical stakeholders. So that's the thing. The third one I would say is more around the way how we engage with our partners. As a technology company, we work with several partners, strategic partners around hosting, infrastructure. So it's important that we ensure that we work with them to understand their constraints, their challenges, and their time zone, and how we ensure that we provide our services to our customers without material impact. So that's a core component of our business. So ensuring you manage with your partners and ensuring that they are actually supporting your new operating model or norms, working remotely is of paramount importance. The last one I would say, but not least, is customers. Typically, as a software company, we deliver software releases to our customers on a regular basis, monthly releases, quarterly releases. Now, all these releases require massive participation from our customers. So they have to validate our releases, they have to test it, and they have to ensure that everything is good before we ship the release to the production. With the new norm, we are ensuring that we talk to our customers and making sure that they engage in such a way without disrupting their availability for their business. And making sure that when they reach out to us, like customer calls and things, support, we are going to manage that, or we have been managing that in such a way that we don't disrupt the hygiene factors. Hygiene factors for customers in software businesses: availability, resiliency, performance of your software platforms. So we want to make sure those things are taken care in such a way that it doesn't create any disruption. So that's the way how we manage these operations on a day-to-day basis across the dimensions I talked about. But one thing is for sure, situation is constantly evolving, rapidly shifting. So we have put together an incident management team that comes together on a daily basis, deliberate what's happening, how the situation is evolving, and make some decisions in a more iterative fashion. And based on that, we pivot or persevere our direction. So that's the way how we manage operations on a day-to-day basis ever since we started facing this pandemic.
Thank you, Raj. A lot of great examples. The one that definitely stands out is, you know, putting together this rapid response team almost. A lot of companies, especially in IT, they implement the whole concept of that chaos engineering, where you run certain simulations and you look at different types of events that you can proactively plan for. Obviously, COVID, nobody could plan for that, but that's exciting to hear that you have a lot of these practices in place. So thank you for sharing that. Chris, for executives who have not necessarily led the teams remotely before, what lessons learned can you share based on your experience so far? Aside from the kind of the standard use of technology and transparent communication, which are very important, what can you share with other executives that you have uncovered through this period?
Sure. So in our case, what's something that I've done as a result of that is, number one, you got to place some trust into your teams, right? I'm sure every company has the ability to measure their outcomes and productivity, but you got to be able to trust them that they're going to be able to get the work done. Most likely your remote workforce will probably work more hours, and there's already studies out there that as a result of this working from home has created an increase or yield in productivity. This is also going to present a challenge as well, because you want to make sure that those people are not going to get burned. I think allowing them to have their time and space for coexisting between their work and personal life, be flexible in terms of accounting for results rather than hours, unless the job really requires a certain number of hours for them to be connected. I think you can still have the ability to manage the results and the outcomes. It depends on how you're going to measure it. I think it's also important that we understand and we recognize that this 100% remote work is causing some stress in the teams, and they need to now figure out how to balance that between their families and their work, because now we're really allowing them to work from their home and be able to coexist with their personal life, allowing them to, the teams really to, and the members to pace themselves in order to avoid burnouts, which is something we're starting to see. This again, there are a lot of studies out there that are indicating that people are getting burned out because now they have an inability to really separate when do they start or when do they stop. So again, we're seeing a lot of all the remote workers that are really having a hard time separating that versus their personal life. You know, it's 12 o'clock, you've been up since 7 in the morning on conference calls with your customers, your clients. It's time for you to have a break in place, whether it's your lunch, your supper, your dinner. So I think it's important that you allow them to figure out a way that they can manage the schedule. Try to encourage them to have some extracurricular activities. These are people that are no longer going to see you face to face. These are people that don't have the ability to commute to work and get away from all the work for half an hour in their car while they get to work and the same thing come back. Their commute now is going to go from their bedroom to their home office to the kitchen to maybe the terrace, right? So it's a whole different dynamics in place that you're experiencing. So extracurricular activity, virtual happy hours and others, I think that will encourage people to feel connected. The biggest challenge that we see is people are starting to feel disconnected in this virtual world, and they feel they need to touch someone. As human beings, we are wired and born with the need to interact with other individuals. We have the need to touch and feel and sense and interact. And now all this is really changing completely the dynamics. And then ultimately, I think you need to give them some leeway and be flexible in terms of being able to handle, again, both their personal and their professional responsibilities. You might have employees that are parents that are tutoring their kids during certain times of the day. So having a little flexibility in there will go a long way. And just be sensible that they're actually having to juggle multiple things in place. In our experience, we have seen a surge in productivity across the organization. And so now we're having to figure out a way to manage that, dial it down to a certain degree so we don't get people more stressed or burn out.
Those are great examples, Chris. Raj, as you lead a global organization, remote leadership is not new to you. I'm curious to get your insights into how do you succeed, from a standpoint of that remote leadership perspective, especially during the current times? What works for you, what doesn't? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think Chris shared great perspectives, and I'll try to add some insights from my side. I think it all starts with virtual leadership, right? That's the phenomenon. Now, as a leader, you have to establish that presence, though you are not physically there when you connect with your remote teams. That's important. So it's not communication, but connection. How do you connect with your teams? And you start with, how can I help you? Right? So the team requires some level of compassion, empathy, and as a leader, we have to exhibit those characteristics and exude those qualities to make them that they are being managed by knowing their concerns, right? So Chris talked about this is not a normal scenario. Employees typically surrounded by their colleagues, they are working from home and they're trying to manage some household priorities and pressure, and they have some psychological concerns, safety issues. So I think it's so important for a leader to be grounded in reality, establish that level of servant leadership, and then connect with them personally and make sure that you are there to support. That's the first one. Now, the second one is remote teams. Now, I have direct reports. I work with them regularly. But what we are also doing is me spending time with my teams directly with the frontline employees. So I go to my direct report staff meeting, spend 10 minutes and ask questions. Guys, how you guys are doing? Just to start at that personal level. And also try to accelerate the way how you recognize your team. Try to appreciate them. Try to make sure that you are there to support and handhold so that they are not by themselves. This is a broader issue and we are trying to support. So it's just not with your direct reports, go beyond that. So that's the second one. Now, the third one is it's so important that you talk to them not about your tactical priorities, but keep reminding our vision. Yes, the vision may be a little clouded right now, but you have to keep talking about that. Hey, we are going to emerge stronger, the sense of optimism. But here is our destination, and here is what we have to do as a great company. The last one I would say is, which is the most important in my opinion, is as leaders, we always tend to jump into the solution and solve the problem. Now, this is the time for you to step back. You need to empower your team members. When you hyper empower your team members, you resist the urge of going and solving for them. So you are not by yourself. Don't try to steer the car by yourself, but have them, allow them to make some decisions. So that agility and iterative managing the priorities is so important. And you have to start from yourself, I think, as a leader, because this is not like you have a instruction manual saying that A, B, and C. We don't have that, right? We don't have a run book. So I think we all need to work our way forward, learn from it and iterate. But leadership is bidirectional. You are not going to share what you know to them, but you also learn from them what they tell you. And that empathy and listening are some of the key traits, and that's the way how we are managing this and how I personally drive this from my standpoint, John, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. And I interview a lot of executives, as part of the Ivy podcast, and we talk to, from various organizations of various size. And one thing that definitely stands out that both of you guys have mentioned is, nobody has a playbook. Nobody could have planned for that, but really taking that step back and looking at things from that, from empathy standpoint, and be able to put yourself in the shoes of everybody else. I think it's important, and that starts at the top as well. So those are great examples that both of you guys have shared, and thank you for that. Um, Chris, with so many companies, there's, downsizing, layoffs, a lot of these unfortunate, events due to, the current times. I'm curious, attracting top talent during COVID, what strategies have worked well for you through this period so far as you or your organization are hiring, looking to bring new talent, and just share with us any lessons learned through this period?
Sure. So obviously this pandemic has created an excess or an influx in terms of the labor pool out there in the marketplace. You know, when we talk about 6 months ago, where you were actually competing for the same resource, and that same resource had multiple offers in place. I mean, those times have changed now, where you have a much bigger pool to where you can draw upon talent and be able to join your organization. At Anthology, since we had always had a significant workforce working from their home offices for quite some time, and that was well before COVID-19, this really, for us, has been an ongoing attracting point in terms of talent, because people want to be able to work from their location. Relocation has been a challenge, especially as you have people that have families, they don't want to relocate their children. So also for majority of our employees, since they're allowed to work from home, that is something that has suited them very well, especially now during this pandemic, which in before we might have said, okay, you can actually work from home 4 days a week, but you need to go to the office 1 day a week. Now in this situation, these potential employees are able to work 100% from home. So that's a huge success for us in terms of attracting. In terms of hiring new folks, as I mentioned before, not only we've seen a huge surge in unemployment risk, specifically not in South Florida, but also across the nation, that is helping fuel that new set of talent. And this surplus of talent, especially in the tech world, is helping us really find, you know, even higher quality of talent. It's unfortunately, but now you have a larger pool where you can draw upon. Before, you had 1 or 2 resumes and you had to go through a quick interview and they make a decision within a day or so. Now you have the ability to really select and pre-select really, you know, a candidate that's going to fit your organization culturally, from a technical perspective and all that. So again, we're going back to a larger pool of talent to draw upon that in the past we didn't have it. Recently also, as we're now Anthology, and because of the combined size and company, we've been able to have the best of the best from a talent and product services, and also attracting. Now people understand that we're a larger company, that we're combining efforts in place. So that also, by the pure nature of the new brand and who we are now, we're seeing talent out there reaching out to us and says, hey, I would love to work for you guys. I've been watching you on the sideline. I've been watching your great success in higher ed individually as companies. Now you have all these 3 companies themselves. We would love to be, you know, to be able to be part of it. But again, at the end of the day, all of us are recruiters, right? Regardless of what the role we do, we're all recruiters out there. So when we go out there and we have a conversation with someone, you know, we have the ability to establish a connection with someone and try to, you know, entice them for them to be able to join the company, the organization. But I think the dynamics, Jahn, have changed dramatically 6 months ago from now, completely different, where before, you know, it was much more of a labor market, and now things are sort of flipped around, and now companies unfortunately have a much larger pool of talent to be able to draw upon, which benefits the organization itself. So hopefully that provides some insight, Jahn.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, you know, I can relate to a lot of that on, you know, professional level. Us at ProSource IT, we're a professional IT staffing organization. So we deal with that on a daily basis. So a lot of the examples that you're providing, it's very relevant. You talk about having, greater availability of talent, but that also presents, an additional challenge to be able to, to interview, to pre-screen, to really find the right person, and also give the candidate the right opportunity to interview you as well, to make sure that this is the right match. So those are a lot of, great examples that you're providing. Thank you, Chris. Raj, to build a little bit upon that, what Chris and I just discussed with so many, the furloughs and the layoffs going on with many different organizations, as an executive within your company, how do you ensure that proper staff motivation and productivity remains, at the same levels within your company as they experience other organizations going through these unfortunate events?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's an important thing that we need to make sure your employees are motivated and their morale is high. So here are some things we do. Again, nothing is perfect, right? But some of the things what we do, I'll highlight. The first and foremost is, as I mentioned earlier, our communication is key. When I say communication, it's not over communication is going to help, but communication to the point. Where are we from the business standpoint? how resilient our business model is, and how are we doing during this turbulent time, and what are the outcomes. So we have a strong culture. Wolters Kluwer, our CEO Nancy, she talks to employees very often, and also our divisional CEOs and GMs of the businesses. So that level of communication, it's just not sending a communication via email, but connecting with your employees, give the lay of the land, but also instill confidence. What's our strategies that we are trying to adapt in order for us to manage today, but how are we are going to create tomorrow. So our strategic and tactical priorities, we always balance. And as a company, we go through several transformations, and we have gone through, and we need to have the next chapter of skills. And so we provide that level of insights, how our skill sets, our strategy, and our business growth is evolving. So communication is so important. Now, the second piece of it is from a motivation standpoint. I think Chris talked about this earlier. This is just not managing tasks. So we need to just get your employees out of that Zoom hangover, I would say, for a lack of better word. So what we do something is every Friday, we have a called knowledge webinar. This is just not, again, a lot of webinars that you get in your inbox. We rotate our leadership team to come and talk about something that's happening in the industry. It's not just technology, but talk about innovation, design thinking, talk about how they manage teams differently. So that level of knowledge sharing during such crisis is helping them. Okay, I'm not just heads down focusing on tasks, but I'm expanding my knowledge horizon, and that is going to help me progress in my career. That's the second one. Now, the third one is, it's a time also for you to just not talk about your day to day, but also the performance management, where they stand, what level of training, where they have to improve upon, what they have to do to advance their career level. So connect with them more often regarding their performance, and ensure that they have a line of sight and they are progressing well. Last but not least is, as a software company, we have some events, we call it as idea and code jams, where on a given day, we bring all the software engineers, and just it's a type of competition. Now we ask them to work on something that's going to solve customers' unmet needs, are going to help us accelerate innovation, are going to help us advance our business opportunities, and we reward them. So we call it as Global Innovation Awards. And that's a part of our culture, but now we are even accelerating that. So employees go and do something different, so that they feel that they are working on something that's going to help them as well as help advancing. Last but not least, again, I go back to the whole leadership aspect of it. You have to make sure that you are there for them when it comes to motivation. And you have to understand their unspoken concerns, their job safety, their household issues, their they're managing their society, community, so many aspects of it. So connecting at that personal level is very, very important. So those are all the things that we put in practice, and I try to do that. And always ask for feedback. Sometimes things don't work, right? It's not just you think you have to do, and they come back and say, you know what, Raj, that's helpful, but can we do something different? So having that open mind for you to embrace that feedback and take action also helps. So those are some things, John, I would say, on top of what Chris mentioned.
That's great. And I think what stood out to me is something that you spoke around innovation, being able to provide that forum for employees to participate in these, the hackathons or whatever the tournaments that you host internally, and really focus and exhibit your skill set and then get rewarded for that. I think it's one of the, often overlooked tools for executives to leverage and really get the employees engaged. So thank you, Raj, for sharing that. Chris, we briefly touched upon operational resilience in one of the topics we discussed earlier. With multiple companies merging together on your side with Anthology Campus Management, how has operational resilience really helped your organization continue the delivery of key business services to your clients, especially during times like this?
That's actually a great question and really tremendously important. This has been one of the core values that has been really at the center and part of our company DNA, and one of the reasons and foundations why this merge took place. But in general terms, we've been able to really focus on continuing managing our partners, our projects, and support really without a hitch. Mainly because, again, we've been operating remotely for quite some time. So this new model of handling new customer remotely and all that, and suppliers and vendors is something we've been doing it for years. Obviously, the face-to-face customer relation is something that you cannot replace. And still, we've had some challenges in terms of making sure that we stay in touch with them. Another thing that we did early on is we made sure that our systems and platforms were prepared to handle this as you start massively moving 100% of your workforce to work remotely. So we did stress tests on our platforms and collaboration solutions to make sure that they were able to handle the load in place. That went across suppliers, customers, services, providers, employees, everywhere. And where deficiencies were found, we're able to improve those. Switching a little bit on the communication side, which I think is sort of a common thread on all the subjects in here, is how do you communicate, how do you stay in touch with your workforce? We put together a very strong communication and awareness program. We began to double up our efforts externally with our customers, suppliers, and partners, proactively reaching out to them and saying, we know that you're starting to have some challenges in here. Can we help you? We know you're moving your programs, your courses online. We are a provider of those platforms. Can we provide you some help in here? Because we know that you have all hands on deck, right? It is that type of value partnership that is going to pay off dividends in the future. And if you look at it from an inside perspective or from an HR perspective, collectively, we made sure that our employees were kept up to speed on everything that was happening periodically, and really encouraging and supporting the workforce. That's something that I think Raj also mentioned. It's just being out there supporting them, encouraging them, establishing that connection, making sure that even though they're remotely, you're still there for them, right? And then doing things that are very simple, as you call them, reach out to them periodically. I mean, there's just basic questions that you can ask them. And this could be, how are you doing? How's your family doing? How are you guys handling there? Do you need anything? Can I do anything as a leader to make your life easier, to help you during these difficult times? And then lastly, this really starts from the top, starts from the leadership team in place. So you can have the best model in place, but if you don't have the support or the intentions from the leadership, your operational resiliency is not going to be sustainable during these difficult times.
Those are great examples, Chris. And one thing that definitely stood out is that almost proactive anticipation, especially when it comes to your clients and the customers, and really try to think proactively what are some of the things that they should take into account, and provide them with some recommendations. I think that's a great asset, and that's a great example of operational resiliency within the organization to be able to support your clients from that standpoint. So thank you for sharing that. Raj, there are a lot of topics on leadership through crisis, especially these days with COVID being the omnipresent topic in everything that we do, unfortunately. But there's not a lot of emphasis on the personal productivity strategies. I'm curious, what has helped you personally stay productive through these times? Any specific recommendations or the strategies and tools that you continue to share internally with some of your peers and teammates?
Yeah, no, that's an important question, because when I expect the best version of my team, if I want to get best out of them, I need to make sure I'm at my best, right? That's the way how it starts. Again, I don't have a framework here, but I'll explain what I try to do in order for me and also for my team to make some good progress. So it all starts with 3 levels, right? One is my psychology. Second one is my performance. The third one is my health and physical, how I manage my physiology. Because we talk about, hey, things are not heading in the right direction and we can't control. That's a common statement we hear. But I think I'd like to shift the conversation is focus on what you can control for you to drive your own productivity. From my standpoint, when it comes to my health, right, I always try to start my day by doing some yoga and meditation. That's very helpful because that helps me to manage my emotions and the way how I approach. Now, I'll connect this because sometimes even your logical employee, most talented employee, during today's circumstance might sound illogical, might react in a stressful way. So I need to manage that. So this type of meditation and yoga practices on a regular basis, that's a keyword, right? Every day I try to follow a time slot and try to see that manages my stress, anxiety, and how I deal with others. So I be a better listener. The second one is what I do is we tend to focus on emails, presentations, responding to my boss, and things like that. So that's living in the moment. But I always try to take some time off. That I call it as more like a strategic thinking time slot. And this is again not like every day 1 hour alarm something like that. But if you separate yourself from the day-to-day tasks and think about something different, that's when your prefrontal cortex works in order for you to be intuitive, innovative, effective. So you can see the big picture more clearly. So that type of managing my concurrent tactical demands and forcing myself to think about something strategic, how to emerge stronger as a leader, how can I help my company to come out stronger, what can we do differently now as a business, as an individual, that is going to position us differently when we come back to normalcy. So that's something. The third one is from my self-management standpoint, we all need to do, in my opinion, do some self-investment. So try to take some courses, try to spend some time. Now, one thing we need to make sure that you have to spend time with your family. In order for you to be successful, they need to have their skin in the game. So try to spend more personal time with kids, with my spouse, and try to spend time with my friends. So trying to balance these three aspects of my individual leadership, I would say is not perfect, but it's helping me. So I can create perspectives. I can create that focus and I can make sure I'm in the zone as opposed to try to manage multiple demands in back of my head. So that's the way how I try to keep myself up and running. And I do have some moments. My eldest son, he graduated, but we didn't have a graduation ceremony. So everything happened at home. So when such things happen, this type of activities help you to balance. So you will still hit lows, but balancing that and how you role model this to your team, how you come across, you need to make sure that it's not you, but it's for your entire team and organization. That's the way. I don't know. I answered your question, but I attempted.
No, you absolutely did. And obviously you're very organized individual, and I can judge that by how you structure your responses. So even every single one of your responses is compartmentalized into at least 3 points, which are very easy to follow. Same with you, Chris. So thank you for sharing those strategies. Chris, any productivity hacks from your perspective that help you?
Um, Again, going back to Raj, I think in terms of productivity, there's different ways that you can measure them. But I think in general, I agree with Raj that when you talk about staying productive and more empowering, prior to this stuff, technology itself has allowed a lot of the accelerations for the end users, customers, employees to be able to stay more productive and collaborate even more than before. But the other thing that I notice is, and how do we ensure that these, end users are staying productive during these times, is I've seen that this pandemic has generated an acceleration, and I would call it proliferation of solutions and communication collaboration tools. If you look at specifically our sector, which is the educational, when have you seen students that are in middle school that now all of a sudden they have to go and take all the classes online, right? Or middle school or high school or even higher ed. So I think we're seeing a tsunami of changes in the dynamics in terms of how do we keep them, still productive, and how do they stay still connected from a remotely perspective on it. And then there's always ways to measure, the productivity, depending on the sector you're in place in there. Especially those in the tech world, we have many ways to measure how successful they are and how productive they are in place. There are lots of metrics that we're starting to see in terms of how much more yielding are we getting. And we're getting to a point now that there's studies in terms of fatigue. So now remote workers now, because of the pandemic, are starting to experience a high level of fatigue. There are even studies that are studying the brain and how you're interacting 100% online and how it's shifting some of your thought process. So very interesting time for us, very challenging. I don't think anyone has a silver bullet or the answer. We talked about this before. There's no such a thing as a playbook of what we're encountering. Every day we'll learn from the day before, the week before, we adjust. And this new norm, most likely that'll be sort of long-term, will continue to challenge us in terms of how to handle the productivity and our customers and clients, still keeping them engaged. Again, I go back to my point that we're wired, our DNA is to interact physically with someone, not necessarily virtually on it. So this I think, changes completely the dynamics in terms of the interaction between the various stakeholders, whether you're customer, your supplier, your employees, or others.
That's great, and thank you for sharing that, Chris. Especially like you mentioned, no one could have anticipated that, and at the same time, it's probably that is the new norm. A lot of studies, a lot of talk is going back to the norm, but something we're going through right now is probably is here to stay for a while, unfortunately. Raj, how are you preparing your organization for the next period, whatever that is? What strategic initiatives are in place to ensure that continuity and company growth?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as I mentioned earlier, it's so important that our strategy is how can you manage today, but you have to create tomorrow. So our company has this strategic model. Every 3 years, we define our new strategic pillars and make sure we continuously accelerate our business growth and the value we deliver to our customers. So with that said, the investment portfolio is critical. So you have to balance your investments in such a way so you are focusing on your day-to-day tactical demands, but don't lose sight of your strategic initiative. So we are continuing to do that. And when it comes to strategic initiatives by itself, there are several aspects to that. From the business side, we are constantly looking for us to expand our horizon into attractive adjacencies. So how can you enhance your core business by expanding to the adjacencies? The second one is game changers. So how can we innovate new products that we started working in the past, but we are not pumping the brakes on that. We are continuously focusing on ensuring that we make progress to that. So that's going to help us create the long-term strategy. Now, of course, we need to clearly look to the market signals and determine should we make any changes to that based on what we have done so far. The next one is technology. Now, technology rapidly shifts. As we all know, the pace of change is shifting so rapidly. Now, with that, the three legs of our strategy, again, I go to three, John, you mentioned that. So it's modernization, innovation, and stabilization. Because modernization programs are multi-year journey. But even though it's a multi-year journey, you have to work backwards and ensure that you provide value all along the way. So that's a program for us. So we are not shifting our focus in such modernization initiatives. We are constantly focusing on making sure that our long-term initiatives are intact. The last one is trade-offs. Now, with all what I mentioned so far, it warrants us to make some trade-offs in accelerating our customer experience, because driving the differentiated high value customer experience is critical during these times, because the customers want to make sure all their hygiene factors are good from technology standpoint, but it's an opportunity for you to expand the scope, cross-sell and upsell. So making sure that you you have that laser focused and also firing on all cylinders to provide that unparalleled and best in class customer experience is important. So we are trying to balance this trade-off, balance this to make trade-offs, but it is not shifting our focus. So that's the way how we manage today, John.
That's great, and I appreciate the insights. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, and I apologize for this. Such an insightful conversation, so much, these guys are sharing with us. I will share my contact information with all of the participants who joined us this afternoon, which I really appreciate for you guys to submit any questions that you may have for Chris and Raj, and we'll address those, probably in writing. Chris, Raj, I want to thank you guys for taking the time this afternoon to share with us and lend your expertise with the rest of us. I personally learned quite a bit. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all of the participants who joined us. Really appreciate it.
John.
Thanks,
Raj.
John. Thanks,
Appreciate
Chris. And thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Enjoy your
Thank you,
weekend.
guys.
Be safe.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care.